And Jared Van Dyke, he is a good buddy of mine, and he is a client of not only a Turnkey Podcast, but in our mastermind as well. And he has a podcast called Up Your Average. Welcome, Jared. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for bringing me on.
I'm happy to have you here. I wanted, because I think it's important from a level of relatability for those that are tuning in, whether it's live right now or in the replay. Talk about some of those fears that you had early on. I mean, and you're still in the really early stages of how many episodes do you have out there now, Jared?
20. So I'm only 20 in.
All right. So talk about those early fears and what you're doing to you have to put those fears in that corner for a moment. With baby, you got to put them in the corner and you have to say, okay, I have these fears, but I'm kind of pushing right through this. And you're doing an amazing job of doing all that. You've invested in yourself. You've invested in your business. You've dedicated the time and effort and energy to do it. So talk a little bit about the early stages that you're going through right now.
Yeah, no, Well, I'll take you back even a little bit further. So this is actually my third podcast that I've attempted. So my first two attempts, I did a lot of research. I did a lot of looking and figured out, what I thought I needed to do, recorded some episodes, came up with show artwork and never launched. Did it again, never launched, and never actually published any of the episodes. And so when I came across you guys actually doing this, that helped kind of give me the confidence, okay, I'm on the right track. And I actually released episodes and pushed through, even some of those fears were still there. It's like, who's going on to hear what I have to say? And that still comes to me to this day is, what am I going to say that's going to help somebody else? And so thanks to you guys, it's kind of helped me get on track. And I made a comment in here of, laying out some of those episodes and seeing that path way forward has helped me give me things to talk about, because I'll start up the mic and I'll be like, I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about today. And that's why they're short and sweet and to the point. And when it hits me, I go and then I edit it down. But now I kind of know where I'm headed has kind of given me some push to get it done a little easier. So I don't know if that helps or not, but
well, what's cool is that I love, not only do I love the format of your show, and Jared found a format that works really well into his personality and his style. Jared is not someone that probably would be comfortable turning on a microphone and spending an hour talking to that eyeball on the camera. But he does have these 7 to 10 minute long episodes. And dude, I get really inspired. I love listening to the short episodes. So for me, I could never listen to Joe Rogan because it's, 2.5 or 3 hours?
It's ridiculous. That's what it is.
But listening to a 7 to 10 minute episode that you do and imparting your wisdom as a life coach and as someone that wants to help people up their average, I think they're really inspiring. So I very much appreciate that. How did you decide that was going to be the format, or was it that's just what's happened?
That's a great question, because it really is just kind of what happened. I started thinking about, all right, what do I want to share? And a lot of what I wanted to share was, I figured out that, who I want to speak to is where I was. I'm basically my own client to some extent. And knowing where I came from and the things that I've gone through and the obstacles I've faced, I'm like, what can I share that's going to help somebody that's maybe in that same situation?
Yep.
And that's where a lot of it came from. And it just seemed like, hey, this is good. Now I'm, as you know, and probably anyone on here that knows me, I'm a voracious podcast listener and Audible listener. And I mean, just ridiculous amounts of audio I take in because of what I do during the day typically. And so I guess that's a little unusual that mine are so short, but I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that's perfect because they can listen to it. It's quick, it's easy, it's consumable. And I kind of get down to the point on it. So eventually I would like to do some interviews, and that's kind of the plan is I'll bring in some interviews. So it'll change it up a little bit, but that type of format just really happened. It just seemed to fit.
Tell me a little bit about some of the early victories that you had. Sometimes victories aren't necessarily attached to dollars and cents that come in the door. It could be something as simple as, hey, I got a download, or I got a new listener, or I had somebody write an email to. Give me some of those victories that you've had, that so people can hear, hey, this could be a victory for you too, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, I kind of just touched on that a little bit. That really surprised me. I got to tell you, this is going to sound funny because you just mentioned it, but hearing from you that you listened to an episode and mentioned something specific to me in the past kind of blew me away. Just because you helped me get my podcast launched didn't mean you're going to catch an episode here or there, So the fact that you even heard something, and I've had some other people that I've shared with that knew I wanted to do a podcast and hadn't released in the past. I said, hey, I got one. I launched it. And they were excited. They went and listened. They gave me feedback and I'm like, dude, this is awesome. And they made some of the same comments. So those little things, those little boosts of energy from people that I didn't know if they would listen or not, but to know that they are. And this is going to sound real funny because I know in the beginning you said the only people listening to your podcast was, your mom. So, but to hear from my brother, that he listens to my podcast, because I mentioned to him one time, well, we went over for Thanksgiving, and one of my niece came up to me and said, hey, I like your podcast. I was like, what? So hearing those little things that you just never think about,
Right.
that nobody who's really going to hear it. And I'm seeing that in my day-to-day life. And I'm getting messages from some people that I've shared with that they've enjoyed it, and they're excited about it, and that right there helps keep me going.
So the new show is called Sales Training for Podcasters, and I know, like you said, as a voracious listener to podcast episodes, so what's some of the stuff that you're hoping to get out of the episodes that JJ and I are going to put together with this amazing just the guests that we've had on today, just to me, they're so awe-inspiring. I feel very humble to be able to have these guests, and include them, including you, Jared, as friends that are in my life. So what's some of the stuff that you're hoping to be able to get from Sales Training for Podcasters?
Well, one of the big things is sales. What can I do to monetize my podcast? Because I started out, I really had no intention of monetizing anything. And as time has gone on, we've talked about it. And so we've kind of started that process. But the more tips that I can get from them, the little things that maybe you guys don't think to tell me, or you just maybe haven't experienced yourself, every little bit of, input that might be that thing that really clicks with me to help me figure out, okay, how can I make a little bit more money so I can put more into this?
Right.
That's really, I would love to get this to the point where, my whole goal is to become location independent. I have family that has health issues. That we live in Cleveland. I got a foot of snow sitting on the ground out here that came overnight, and that cold really affects them. So to be able to pick up and move somewhere, my traditional business, the company I own, being a handyman, I got to be here. I got to go out and physically work every day in order to bring money in. So if I have something that's remote, that's a game changer for me, and it lets me help my family and get them to where they need to be.
Talk a little bit about how the podcasting community has kind of been like a really good support mechanism for you. I know that you, again, are someone that does not like to work well. You don't work well in a vacuum. You prefer probably to be in an environment that's very supportive. It's always great to be in that environment, but just share your experiences as far as with the podcast community.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, because when I go into the group and I have a question, or I see somebody else's question, it's the feedback we get from everybody else is just amazing. It helps reinforce that I'm either on the right track or maybe I need to shift a little bit. And I may not have had a question and somebody else asked it, and I'm like, I needed that. I didn't even know I needed that. And that alone has been a tremendous help. And yes, I am very much an extrovert. So lockdown has sucked for me. So the being an extrovert, having a place where I can actually communicate with people has been tremendous. And I guess the cool thing is even if you're an introvert, you can go in there and comment. It's not like you actually have to talk to somebody. So, but that's been priceless, being able to get that feedback. And I'm seeing the perspective of a lot of other people. And some of those are very, very targeted to, I guess, really who my audience would be. They're other business owners. They're other people that have gone through some of the same things I've gone through. So from that standpoint, I'm really getting to hear things from the people that I want to help.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. And if you want more information about the group that Jared is making reference to, there's a couple of different groups. He's, of course, in our mastermind, and that's at what's our ultimatepodcastmastermind.com? That's what it is. ultimatepodcastmastermind.com. You can get information about the mastermind there. Or if you want information just about a larger group, our launch group that we have, that we've put together, we have about 130 people, I think, that are in that group. And we're all sharing stories and support and just being sounding boards. We have weekly office hours for that group as well. Just feel free to send me an email directly to doug@turnkeypodcast.com or just drop a comment in the chat box, and Jared will probably be the first one to answer the question for you anyway. So that's cool. So what else? What other inspiring words can you share with those that are kind of tuning in today and just trying to figure out how to get their wheels under them to get the sales game rolling, or just to get this whole podcast process going for themselves?
Well, based on my experience, I would say take a look at where you're headed and just take that next little step. Don't look at the end as you got to get there. Just get headed in the right direction, but then say, okay, what's the next little step I can take to get going? Because I think part of my problem getting started in the first place was I was getting overwhelmed because I was looking clear down the road.
Right.
And when you guys said, hey, do this. Okay, now do this. Now do this. That was very helpful for me. And now I'm helping other people do the same thing.
Well, and it's so true. You don't have to be 30 steps down the path from somebody to be able to give them advice. Even if you're 1 or 2 steps down the path, it's actually probably a better position to be in because you're much more relatable. You know, when I say to somebody, and I don't say this to be intimidating, but when I tell somebody, you know, we've done nearly 1,200 episodes of the Nice Guys on Business, they're like, oh my God, I'm just trying to get my first 10 episodes out there. And I
can't relate.
It's hard to relate to that. But relating to a guy that's got 20 episodes,
it's a lot easier.
That's the purpose of the community.
I actually had a conversation last night with somebody in reference to that. And that was one of the things I said. It's all well and good that there's these companies and these people that have all these episodes, but I can help you. And I'm just right ahead of you. So I may not be all the way down the road, but I know what you're going through. I can help get you in the right place. Even if it's not me helping you, I can help get you to the right place. And so I think that's tremendous when we look at things in that way. And I thought it was cool. Virginia was talking about, 100% sales success.
Right. Closing ratio. Right.
Doesn't mean it's with me, but I'm going to get you to the right person. And it's funny because that's a lot of what I've done in life. So even, I've been out on surgery, so I've been kind of cooped up and I still get calls. I still get referrals. And because of that, I have other people that I'm sending them to because I couldn't go help them.
Right.
And that it blows them away because now they're getting referrals from somebody who's really in their mind a competitor, but I know that person and I feel like I can trust that person. And so I'm willing to connect and do things like that, even though, it's not best for my company. I'm not going to make anything, but I'm taking care of my client. And that's something I've always done. And that's something I've always wanted people to know, that regardless of what happens is I'm here to take care of you. And I may not always be the answer.
So what level of measurement do you have when it comes to success? There's certain metrics that people always look to. They look to things like, well, how many downloads do you have, or how many episodes do you have out there? How many countries are you being listened to, or any of those things? What are the metrics that you are using to determine what success equates to for your show?
Do you want my honest response?
Yeah, I'll take it. I want them all.
It's the fact I published.
That's good.
So I know that in the beginning you focused on metrics. I never have been a metrics person. I put it out there. Who needs it? Hopefully is going to find it, and I'll try to get people to it. But I'm not hung up on the downloads. If it's one person that listens, it's one person. I don't tend to look at things in terms of downloads and things of that nature. Yes, down the road and as time goes on, monetization is going to be a thing. So then, yeah, the money that comes in will be, a measuring stick of that as well. But really, as long as I got one person that's willing to listen, I want to keep doing what I can to help. And that's, to me, that's it's going to take care of itself in the end.
Yeah, I think that in the beginning, I was definitely a download watcher, and it took us. And I've told this story so many times on different podcast episodes that I've either done for myself or been guests on other people's shows. It took us 17 months and 20,000 downloads to figure out that we didn't know what the frick we were talking about. And just keep in mind, 17 months of, let's say we were doing on average, probably at that point, 2 episodes a week. So 17 months times, I mean, it was hundreds of episodes, nearly 200 episodes, I think is what it came down to when it was all said and done. We had made no money. We had a fairly significant amount of downloads relative to where we started. We had 20,000 downloads, but we could not take the download to Wells Fargo to cash it. Nobody was, when I was looking at just saying, okay, success to me equates to dollars coming in the door, and we've done $0 with our show. It took Steve Olsher coming on our show. He's the creator of New Media Summit. It took Steve Olsher coming on our show for us to, for me to even take a look under a microscope at it, because he said to me, well, let's see, you have 20,000 downloads or whatever. I can't remember what it was. No, at the time. No, this was even later. This was probably a year later than that. It was $1 million. And he said I should be doing $150,000 in business. Yeah, this was 3 years in. And we had made some money from our show, but it was not any impact. And he's like, you should be making 150 grand from your show a year. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know you could make any money from your show. I really had no idea that anything. I didn't know where it was coming from.
But you did promote your book.
I did, but I did make $2 every time I had an episode. I made $2 for my book sales. It just couldn't get anywhere. It was a really interesting experience for me in the very beginning. And until I started to get around, talk about community, until I started to get around all the people that were the professionals at podcasting, whether it was like Michael Neely, who's just about to come up, or JJ, or Melanie, or Devi, or any of those, or Steve himself, and just I'm like, I didn't realize there was even a potential to make money from this. And then I started seeing all these people that were making businesses out of this. It was incredible, which is why I look where you are and say 20 episodes in, geez, I was still pulling up my podcast diapers at the time. And I'm like, I'm so glad that you're just staying in the game, because that's the biggest challenge, is just getting people to stay in the game long enough to realize success.
Yeah.
It's a long game.
The thing I like is that you did all that so that we don't have to. And that's really the gist of it all. Is I prefer to learn from other people's mistakes. I mean, I make plenty of my own, but I prefer to learn from other people's mistakes and how they learned and what works for them, and try to, not mimic it, and see if I can make some tweaks and go my own path. But by the same token, if I can step in your footprints, let's do it.
Well, yeah, and Strickland and I, we purposely did not even look at where other people had gone when we started Nice Guys on Business. We had no idea how to do audio, but he had audio engineer experience, but not the podcasting. We had no idea how to monetize, so we didn't have a path to follow. We had no idea how to format the show. We really didn't know anything other than, I think we should probably have a voiceover guy at the beginning and end. And Steve O'Brien has been a staple in our show for almost 1,200 episodes.
And now our show.
Now our show too. That's right.
Well, and something I think that a lot of people need reminded of, you mentioning not knowing what the format should be. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong on format, because everybody's format's going to fit their personality, fit them, and fit what they want to achieve. Yep. You guys do your Friday episodes, which could be 30 minutes or could be an hour and a half, depending on what's going on.
Their mood.
Yeah. Yep. And how many voicemails I leave. So it's
yes.
You're going to love Friday's episode, by the way. You're going to love Friday's episode. We had some technical glitches, but it leads to something really funny in the show. So you'll hear it on Friday.
I appreciate that. So
hey man, I appreciate you being here and helping us from a new podcaster's perspective. And and thank you for hanging out with us for as long as you have so far today.
Absolutely. I appreciate being here and appreciate you guys. So thanks so
Yeah.
much.
We appreciate you, Jared.
Yeah.